Before this morning's group meditation, let's explore the risks of Kundalini. Making sense of the spiritual terrain before us is sometimes made easier by reviewing philosophical yin and yang. There are many types of yin and yang. There is medical yin and yang and agricultural yin and yang. We're talking philosophical yin and yang. According to the teachings of Lao Tzu as found in the Tao Te Ching. Once one has read the Tao Te Ching over and over and over again, one begins to see patterns. One begins to see that the author felt there was two things he was trying to do with yin and yang. Number one, identify which behaviors were yin and which were yang, and always, always, always recommend his readers forsake yang and choose yin. Forsake patriarchy and choose matriarchy. Forsake demon nature and choose Buddha nature. Forsake Darth Sidious nature and choose Qui-Gon Jinn nature. The Darth Sidious nature is about being manipulative and controlling and taking their chi or our prana or the force and bending it to our will. Whereas our Qui-Gon Jinn nature is respectful of the force or chi or energy and seeks to flow with it as a servant. Completely different. There is something quite ubiquitous about bringing energy work into the so-called practice of meditation, or I should say into the practice of so-called meditation. For true meditation is not concentrating. True meditation is not manifesting. True meditation is allowing. That's a huge difference. But the ubiquitousness, this is a tough word, the ubiquitousness of energy work can be found in Hinduism, some sects of Hinduism, some sects of Buddhism, some sects of Neo-Taoism, some sects of Christianity, some sects of Islam. I'm looking at you, Rumis. So, not Rumis, Sufis, excuse me. Looking at you, Sufis. Okay, so I've experimented with many of these. I've experimented with Buddhist and Taoist and Hindu energy work in the laboratory of my own body and mind, of course, having done the research first. And their practice seems to be based on the hypothesis that sagehood or self-realization or enlightenment is some sort of a state, like a frequency a radio might turn into, or like a YouTube channel we might select on our browser. But it's not that. According to the greatest spiritual luminaries, I'm looking at Lao Tzu, I'm looking at the Buddha, I'm looking at Garab Dorje. That is not what enlightenment is about. Enlightenment is about noticing where we're at and releasing our resistance where we're at in a way that increases our centered spontaneity, in a way that helps us to lovingly and wisely, not cleverly, but wisely, allow our utterances and our deeds and our communications to flow in the most beneficial way for all beings everywhere. You could think of it as sort of a spiritual autopilot, which we access through the awareness and acquiescence of meditation. It is completely opposite of concentration and controlling and bending. Once again, let's return to Star Wars. You know, in Return of the Jedi, we saw the terrible price that Darth Sidious paid to try to bend the Force to his will, and it created the frequently observed phenomena in Star Wars of the corruption of the flesh, which is a wonderful metaphor of the corruption of the spirit, how trying to control energy or the Force or our circumstances forces us to become more and more and more, or forces us to more and more indulge our tendencies to be rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. And I don't know if anybody who looked at that and says, yeah, that's peaceful. It ain't peaceful. Especially in the comics, Darth Sidious is not a warm, cuddly fellow. Darth Sidious tormented Darth Vader and others as well. He reminded me a lot of what was the character from Harry Potter, He Who Shall Not Be Named? Help me out in the comment area. At the very, very end, in the very final movie in the series of movies, we see him as this petulant, childish, cruel, foolish entity. Voldemort, that's his name. And I don't want to be that way. And I'm pretty sure if you're showing up to this live stream, you don't want to be that way either. You don't want to be Grumpy Cat. You want to be peaceful, loving, happy cat. You want to be a purring pussycat. I know I do. So our job, let's tie this up in a big red bow. Our job is not to bend our bodies or the universe to our will. Our job is to notice and release in a way that is conducive to love and centered spontaneity. So towards that end, I look forward to chanting and meditating with you after I take about 90 seconds to answer the musical question, who's this bloke? This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you through the instrument of Patreon. If you love Star Wars and you wish to meditate as transformatively as General Leia Organa upon Ajan Kloss under the guidance of Luke Skywalker, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Now, I've got some good news for you. If at any point during this morning's live stream you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them to your life, you'll want to type your question in great detail in the chat window. Don't worry about waiting to the end of the live stream. Instead, strike while the iron is hot. Now, the real question is, where can you find the chat window? If you're using a laptop or a desktop, it should be toward the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If you're using your smartphone, it should be down below. Yes, like a basement in a scary haunted house. So together as a team, let's chant the Saturday morning excerpt of Garab Dorje's Dorje Simpa Numka Che. Together. All phenomena are perfect and complete, nothing excluded. The true condition is equally beyond change, spaciousness without limit, beyond dependent arising, beyond causes and conditions. Incomparable wisdom alone knows the blissful continuum of self-perfection. The domain of the ultimately real which does not arise from extraneous causes and conditions. This insight is easy, so easy, in fact, that it seems difficult. Though all pervading the continuum is invisible, it cannot be pointed at by saying this is it, not even by Vajrasattva himself. This amazing, wonderful display of energy, spacious by nature, transcends action. From within or deeper knowingness beyond thought and thinking, these dynamic potentials certainly arise. Now, quick like a bunny, let's skedaddle over to this morning's concise practice text, Easy Dzogchen. Now, most of my students really take comfort in the idea of a bookend. If you have a shelf and you have less books than you have shelf, we'll often put a solid object at the end of each book to keep them from tipping over. Whoopsie. Similarly, most of my students find comfort in a very concise chant just before and after meditation. A chant that exercises our neural pathways responsible for empathy and enthusiasm. Together. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. Mindfulness and meditation are known by many names, including Zen, Chan, Dhyana, Mahamudra, Mahasandhi, Ati Yoga, Dzogchen, and Trekcho. Despite the fanciness of the names, the technique is easy. Mindfulness is practiced during our inhalation, when we spontaneously access our sympathetic nervous system located within our spinal cord, which is not responsible for active communication, but instead is responsible for perception, especially the type of perception that's practiced vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. Thus allowing us to notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, including emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. But what are we to do with all these things that we notice? Why, we meditate upon them. But what does that mean? It means that during each exhalation, we are wired to effortlessly access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is wired for both physical relaxation as well as mental release, to the point that as we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation can now feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void. Now, a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. Therefore, we must ask, what is a tangible, real-world example of a non-graspable, vast, empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be compelling to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand? So there you have it. We use void not as a verb, not as a literal noun, but simply as a metaphor for the visceral experience of relaxing in harmony with our exhalation. Therefore, during each inhalation, we could silently and mentally recite either the one-syllable word for this, or the three-syllable phrase, notice this. Whoopsie. Notice this. And during the exhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the one-syllable metaphor, void, or the three-syllable metaphor, emptiness. But 9 times out of 10, as our default mode, let's work with the one-syllable bit, this void. Let's sit impeccably in a manner that would delight our grandmother. If you're like me and you feel a little bit of excitement or maybe even trepidation at the prospect of meditating, then during your inhalation you may want to acknowledge the excitement with the silent and mental recitation of the three-syllable noun emotion, followed by the silent and mental recitation of the three-syllable word emptiness during your out-breath. And then we can return to our standard practice of this void. To the left, we see a photograph of a statue of the Buddha showing us a comfortable way to arrange our legs in meditation. To the right, we see a couple sitting in tantric union. The smaller white figure reminds us to watch the play of mind, to watch mind's perceptions, emotions, intentions, cognitions, recollections, and imaginings. The larger blue figure reminds us to then relax into mind's non-graspable nature. Of course, both watching and relaxing in harmony with our inhalation and exhalation. Another way of remembering this is that for anyone who's ever played with this position of Tantra, you would remember that the rider tends to be dynamic, the ridee tends to be stable. So the dynamism reminds us of the play of mind. The stability reminds us of relaxing to mind's non-graspable nature. In the tantras, the ancient sadhanas of Dorje Naljorma, it refers to her consort as her Vajra throne. Or in other words, her tool. Take that, guys. As we sit in meditation, occasionally a memory will come up. We want to explore it in a non-dual manner. So rather than describing the memory as pleasant or unpleasant, we simply describe it as a memory. So as we breathe in, we can silently and mentally recite the verb remember. And as we exhale, we can silently and mentally recite the metaphor emptiness. And as we sit in meditation, occasionally we will find ourselves rehearsing a conversation. So during our in-breath, we may wish to silently and mentally recite cognition, and during the exhalation, emptiness. If we are recalling a previous conversation, that would be remember, emptiness. And so what we're doing is we're blending mindfulness, but with non-duality in our choice of generic labels. Welcome to this morning's live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, type your question in great detail in the chat window. I check for questions about once every 8 minutes. So, as we sit in meditation, we can perceive all manner of things, sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, including emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. Sometimes we'll feel the emotion of desire, sometimes we'll feel the emotion of revulsion. To transcend the duality, we would simply refer to either desire or revulsion as emotion. We're still being honest with ourselves, but we are transcending dualistic labels. There will come a moment in meditation where it's like you're feeling a little bit of aversion to meditation. And that becomes an object of mindfulness. And we simply silently and mentally recite. And when we notice that, and then during our inhalation, silently and mentally recite emotion. And then during the next exhalation, recite emptiness. And we can go back and forth with around 3 or 4 rounds and then return to our standard meditation, this void. And so our job is not to stop things from coming up. Our job is not to force things to go. Our job is just to simply notice and release. Think of it as the metaphysical version of catch and release. The great irony is that the path of liberation is paved with this practice. All enlightenment is mastery of this practice, the performance of this practice, spontaneously. We get so good at this practice that we perform it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. That's it. Nothing mystical, nothing magical, just the mastery of another skill, like flossing your teeth or tying a shoe. That is why the Buddha said that full enlightenment can be mastered in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. If someone tells you it takes the length of 3 great aeons to become a Buddha, thank them for their time and then run away. Because that's just their way of saying that their stuff isn't going to work and you don't get to hold them accountable. Let us remember our job is not to select our mental states or our physiological states, but to notice and release, to dance with it, as it were. Let us seal this morning's meditation with 2 brief chants. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and calmness flow spontaneous and uncontrived. May everyone be free from misery, may everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could type something in the chat window, you could give this live stream a thumbs up, you could share it with a friend, you could even help support this channel on Patreon. In approximately 2 2/3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's mid-morning lesson and meditation. Until then, may you and yours be happy and healthy, and if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.